The night on Outpost Vega 9 was silent except for the low hum of machines breathing in the cold void of space. Ethan Cole sat alone at his workbench, tightening bolts on a broken air filter. He liked the silence. Silence meant safety. Silence meant nothing had gone wrong yet. But that night something changed. The airlock hissed open. Cold air rushed in. A shadow stood in the doorway, tall, thin, and wrapped in a dull gray cloak. The figure didn't speak. Only two glowing eyes looked out from under the hood, soft and pale like twin moons. Ethan stood up slowly. "Who are you?" he asked. The figure pulled back the hood. She was not human. Her skin was smooth like polished stone, tinted a soft silver blue. Her hair fell in thin strands that shimmered faintly in the dim light. She held a small child against her chest, wrapped tightly in cloth. "My name is Lira," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "I need work." Ethan blinked. Aliens were rare out here, and her kind, the Lyrians, were almost never seen in human space. "You came through the storm belt alone?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. She nodded once. "I had to. There is no one left on my moon. My mate is dead, my people scattered." Ethan said nothing for a long moment. The child stirred and gave a small cry. Lira gently hushed her with a sound like a lullaby sung underwater. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. He didn't know why. "This outpost isn't safe for a child," he said at last. "Nowhere is safe," she replied simply. Her words hung in the cold air. Ethan thought about sending her away. He had enough problems keeping the outpost running. Extra mouths meant less rations, and if command found out he hired a non-human without permission, they would fine him, or worse. But he also saw how thin she looked. Her hands trembled from cold. Her eyes held the same emptiness he sometimes saw in the mirror. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. There's an old storage room. It's warm. You can stay, if you work." Lira lowered her head in thanks. "I will work." The next morning, Lira was already up cleaning the hydroponics bay. Ethan watched her from the doorway. She moved like someone half asleep, quiet and graceful, never wasting a step. The child, a small girl with soft gray eyes, played silently in the corner, building shapes from old wires. Some of the other workers whispered when they saw her. Humans didn't trust Lyrians. Rumors said they were cursed. Their tears were poison, their love deadly. Ethan didn't believe in curses, but he noticed how everyone stepped aside when Lira walked past. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She ate alone. At night, Ethan checked the systems and passed by the storage room. Through the thin wall, he sometimes heard her humming that strange underwater lullaby. He told himself it was none of his business. One evening, the air recycler jammed again. Ethan climbed inside the maintenance tunnel to fix it. Sparks rained from the broken circuit. He cursed under his breath, sweat stinging his eyes. Then the fan blade spun without warning. The tunnel shook violently. Before he could react, someone pulled him back. Ethan stumbled out, landing hard on the floor. Lira stood above him, breathing fast. She had moved like a flash, faster than any human could. The fan blades tore the air where his head had been. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Ethan stared at her. "How did you move so fast?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down, almost ashamed. Then she quietly walked away. Ethan sat there, heart pounding. He had been seconds from death, and she had saved him. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her glowing eyes, her sudden speed, the way she had caught his arm so gently. Something about her didn't make sense. Lyrians were supposed to be weak, delicate, peaceful, but she had shown strength. And something else. Something hidden. He opened her employment record. It was almost empty. No known family, no homeworld listed. Just one note from Central Command. Widow, survivor of the Lira collapse. He didn't know what that meant. He just knew that when she had said there is no one left, she had been telling the truth. The days passed slowly. Ethan found himself watching her more often. She never looked back. But sometimes when she thought no one was watching, her eyes grew distant and faint light shimmered in her tears. No one else saw it, only him. The other workers avoided her. Some whispered that she killed her mate. Some said her kind brought bad luck. Ethan didn't like their talk, but he didn't defend her either. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because part of him wondered if they were right. On the 7th night, a storm swept across the outpost, fragments of ice and rock smashing against the hull. The lights flickered. The air howled through the cracks. Ethan stood at the window watching the black sky boil. Lira stood behind him silently, her child asleep in her arms. "They will say I am cursed," she said softly. "They always say this." Ethan turned. "I don't care what they say." For the first time, her eyes met his. The glow inside them was dim, like dying stars. "Maybe," she whispered. "You should." Days passed like slow-moving stars around Outpost Vega 9. Ethan Cole noticed small things about Lira, how she moved like a shadow, how she made no sound even when walking on metal floors, how her child never cried. It should have been peaceful, but it wasn't. It was quiet. Too quiet. Lira worked long hours in the hydroponics bay, fixing broken water tubes and trimming glowing algae strands. She worked like someone who had nothing left to lose. She never asked for rest. She never asked for help. She only worked, and every time Ethan tried to speak to her, she lowered her eyes. One night, the power grid failed in the east wing. Ethan grabbed a toolkit and rushed through the dark halls. As he opened a fuse panel, he heard soft footsteps behind him. It was Lira. "I can help," she said softly. "You should be with your child," Ethan replied. "She sleeps," Lira said, almost like an excuse. Together they worked silently. Sparks burst from the wires. Ethan flinched. Lira didn't. Her hands moved like flowing water, smooth and precise, never hesitating. When the power came back, the corridor lights flashed on. Lira stepped back quickly, as if afraid to be seen in the light. Ethan looked at her hands, thin, delicate, but with tiny scars glowing faintly under the skin and like silver cracks. "What happened to your hands?" he asked. "Old things," she said quietly, and left without looking at him. After that night, Ethan began seeing more strange moments. Once, a heavy container slipped from a top shelf. It should have crushed her. Instead, she simply raised her hand, and the container stopped, floating for a breathless second before crashing gently to the floor. Another time, he caught her whispering to the algae tanks. The glowing strands bent toward her voice like flowers reaching for sunlight. No one else saw, only Ethan. Still, rumors spread like frost. "She's cursed," muttered Burke, the mechanic. "Her husband died mysteriously," said Mara, the cook. "She'll bring the whole outpost down," someone whispered when she passed. Lira never answered. She walked like their words were wind passing through her. But Ethan saw the way her shoulders tightened when people stared. He saw the faint flicker in her glowing eyes like dim stars about to break. One evening he found her alone in the storage bay, sitting on the cold floor. The child was asleep beside her, small and curled like a moon pebble. Lira was staring at nothing. Her eyes were glowing faint and wet, tears made of pale light. "Why are you crying?" Ethan asked gently. She blinked fast, as if waking from a dream. "I am not crying, but I can see," he started. "No," she cut him off. "You see what you want, not what is real." Then she stood and walked away into the darkness, leaving behind only the faint smell of rain. That night, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling. He had seen fear before. He had seen grief. But Lyra's eyes, they were something else, like they carried whole storms inside them, and he began to wonder, What was she really running from? What had happened on her lost moon? The next day, the outpost alarm screamed. Reactor pipe burst in the lower decks. Vapor hissed like a living snake, flooding the tunnels. Ethan grabbed his mask and ran. The heat burned his face. He turned a corner and saw Lira already there. She had no mask. "Get back," Ethan shouted. "It's toxic." She didn't listen. She stepped into the steam, hands glowing faint silver. The heat bent away from her like wind hitting stone. She gripped the ruptured pipe and forced it closed with her bare hands. The noise cut off. The steam stopped. Ethan stared. His heart felt like a drum in his chest. Lira stepped out of the cloud. Her skin was wet with condensation, not burns. Her silver blue eyes glimmered like cold fire. "Are you even alive?" Ethan whispered. She said nothing. She just walked past him like a ghost. Later, when the systems were stable again, Ethan sat alone in the control room. He played the security footage. In the screen's cold light, he saw her stop boiling steam with her bare hands. He saw the glowing veins in her arms shining like cracked stars. She was not just a widow, she was not just an alien. She was something else. Something hidden. Something powerful. And Ethan knew, if anyone else saw this footage, they would take her away, dissect her, study her, maybe kill her. So he deleted it. That night, as he walked past her room, he paused. Through the thin wall, he heard her child whisper something in their soft alien language. Lira answered with words like falling snow. Then silence. Ethan stood there for a long moment. His chest felt heavy and warm at the same time. She was hiding something dangerous. He knew that. But she was also protecting something precious. And he didn't know which truth was stronger. The days after the reactor accident were quiet again, but not the same. Ethan Cole found himself watching Lira without meaning to. She moved like a soft breeze through the outpost halls, silent and sure, her long hair glimmering in the dim lights. Her child followed like a small shadow, eyes curious but never loud. Before, Ethan saw her as a stranger. Now he wasn't sure what he saw, but he knew this. She had saved his life. And he couldn't stop thinking about that. One afternoon, he caught her standing by the algae tanks, whispering softly. The glowing strands swayed toward her like they were listening. When she turned and saw him, she froze. "You talk to plants?" he asked, trying to smile. Her eyes lowered. "They listen," she said. "They are alive." There was no joke in her voice, no smile. Just quiet truth. Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe they like your voice." For the first time, her lips curved. Not a full smile, but close. It startled him more than her powers ever had. Over the next days, small changes began. She no longer ate alone. Sometimes she sat across from him in the cafeteria, silent but present. The child giggled when he made little toys from scrap wires. Once he gave the child a tiny flashlight. She shined it on Lira's face and laughed like soft bells. Lira didn't laugh, but her eyes softened. At night, Ethan walked the halls and found her repairing broken vents, tightening old bolts. She worked even when no one watched. When he offered to help, she simply nodded. They worked together in silence, the kind that felt safe. But danger never stayed away for long. One evening, the outer radar picked up fragments from a passing comet. The outpost trembled as rocks slammed the shields. Lights flickered. Power died in the east sector. Ethan and Lira ran through the dark corridors. The air was cold, sharp, biting. The child clung to Lira's chest, eyes wide. "Main systems are shutting down," Ethan muttered, checking his wrist console. "If the oxygen units fail." "They won't," Lira said firmly, gripping his arm. Her hand was cold and trembling. They reached the control room. The generator was offline, frozen by the comet dust. Ethan hit the restart again and again. Nothing. "Come on," he whispered. Then he felt her eyes on him. "Let me," Lira said quietly. Before he could answer, She placed her glowing hands on the generator core. Sparks hissed. The lights burst on, flooding the room with warm orange glow. The hum of air returned. The screens blinked awake. She pulled her hands back. Thin silver cracks glowed under her skin, fading slowly. Ethan stared. Does it hurt? She didn't meet his eyes. It always hurts. Then she turned to leave. That night, Ethan couldn't rest. He kept seeing her face when she said those words. It always hurts. She carried pain like it was part of her bones. And yet she saved everyone. Again, he wondered what it cost her each time she used her power, and why she was willing to pay it. The next day, something unusual happened. Burke the mechanic cornered Lira in the corridor. His voice was sharp. Your kind don't belong here. You're cursed. You'll bring death. Lira froze, clutching, her child tighter. Ethan stepped between them. Enough, Burke. She'll kill us all, Burke spat, just like she killed her mate. She didn't, Ethan said firmly. Now walk away. Burke glared, but he left. Lira stood still, eyes wide like a hunted creature. They will hate me, she whispered. Ethan turned to her. Let them, I don't. She blinked fast, as if those words were strange to her ears. She said nothing, but the glow in her eyes dimmed to something softer. Later that night, they shared a meal in the quiet cafeteria. The child sat between them, drawing with a dull stylus on an old data pad. Lira watched her silently, shoulders slowly, relaxing. Ethan watched her watch the child, and something stirred deep in him. Something warm, something dangerous. Was he like her? Ethan asked softly. Lira frowned. Who? Your mate. Lyra's eyes lowered. For a long time she said nothing. Then, he was gentle. He sang to her before she was born. He promised to never leave. Her voice broke on the last word. Ethan wanted to reach across the table. He didn't. I'm sorry, he said simply. She nodded once, then stood and carried her child away without another word. When the cafeteria door closed, Ethan sat alone, staring at the empty seat across from him. He didn't know when it happened, but her presence no longer felt like a shadow. It felt like the first heartbeat after silence. Slow, fragile, and real. The warning sirens came like a scream from the bones of the outpost. Ethan Cole sat up in his bunk, heart racing. The whole station trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling like gray snow. Outside the porthole, the black sky boiled with electric fire. A storm, a space storm, the kind that tore ships in half and left stations frozen tombs. He ran to the control room. Screens flashed red, shields were failing. Meteor fragments slammed the hull with bone-shaking force. Lira was already there, standing with her child wrapped close against her chest. Her hair floated from the static in the air. Stay in your quarters, Ethan said, breathless. No, she replied. We will stay where it is safest, with you. Before he could argue, another impact hit. The lights went black. Darkness swallowed the outpost. Ethan's voice echoed. Power grid's down. Oxygen filters are failing. We have to seal the inner decks. Lead the way, Lira said calmly. He grabbed flashlights and led her through the trembling corridors. The air was cold and thin. Metal walls screamed as they bent under the pressure of the storm. The child made no sound, just stared with huge glowing eyes. They reached the engineering bay. Ethan slammed the emergency door shut. The heavy locks clanged like thunder. Air will last. Maybe 2 days, he muttered. If the storm keeps hitting, no rescue will come. Lira said nothing. She simply sat cross-legged on the floor, holding her child close as if storms meant nothing to her. Ethan tried to restart the generator. Sparks burst. It stayed dead. Outside, something hit the hull so hard the floor jumped. The lights flickered, then stayed out. The cold crept in like a living thing. Hours passed. They wrapped themselves in thermal blankets. The room felt like a cave at the bottom of space. Ethan's hands shook from cold. His breath came out as white mist. "Your child must be freezing," he said. "She sleeps," Lira whispered. "She dreams of warm suns." Ethan smiled faintly. Lucky her. Time slowed. The silence grew heavy. In the dim glow of his flashlight, Ethan saw Lira watching him. Her glowing eyes were soft now, not sharp like before. "You are not afraid," she said. "I am," he admitted. "I just don't let it win." Lira tilted her head. "Fear always wins in the end." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but not tonight." She lowered her gaze, but he saw the corner of her lips curve, the smallest, faintest smile. Later, as the cold bit harder, Ethan's fingers went numb. He shivered violently. "Move closer," Lira said quietly. Ethan hesitated. "That might be strange." "You will die if you stay proud," she replied. He laughed weakly and moved closer. The blanket rustled. She smelled like rain on metal, sharp and clean. Their shoulders touched. Her skin was cold yet somehow steady, like stone that remembered the sun. The child stirred in her sleep, then reached a small hand toward Ethan's chest. Ethan froze, then gently took her hand. "She thinks you are safe," Lira whispered. "I'll try to be," he said. Hours stretched like years. The storm howled beyond the walls. The world outside became only sound and darkness. Lira rested her head lightly against the wall, eyes half closed, still holding her child. Ethan watched her face in the faint light. She looked peaceful, but not empty anymore. Not broken. Something, deep inside him, shifted like gravity turning. He didn't want her to disappear when this storm ended. He didn't want the silence to come back. When the storm finally passed, the silence returned like a held breath. Warning lights blinked yellow. The air grew warmer. The walls stopped trembling. Ethan stood, stretching his stiff body. Lira rose too, holding her now sleeping child like a precious star. "We survived," Ethan said softly. "Yes," she replied. "But they will speak." "Who?" "The others. They will say I stayed here, men, with you." Ethan met her eyes. "Let them talk." Her gaze held his for a long, still moment. The glow in her eyes was soft, like starlight seen through water. Then she turned and walked out of the bay, her cloak whispering across the floor. Ethan stood alone in the fading cold. He had held her close only to survive. But something deeper had awoken in that dark, freezing silence, a warmth that had nothing to do with heat, and he knew the storm was over. But something else had just begun. The storm had passed, but it had left something behind. Not broken walls, not frozen pipes. Something quieter, something warmer. Ethan Cole felt it every time he saw Lira. She no longer moved like a shadow. She moved like she belonged. In the eye, days after the storm, the outpost slowly returned to life. Lights stayed steady. Machines hummed again. The workers spoke and laughed. But they watched Lira more than before. They had noticed. They noticed how she walked beside Ethan now, not behind him. They noticed how her child ran to him with bright eyes. They noticed how Lira sometimes looked at him like she forgot to be afraid. And they whispered. Ethan ignored them. Or tried to. He worked with Lira late into the nights, fixing damaged power lines, realigning broken shields. They spoke little. They didn't need to. When her fingers brushed his hand, it felt like lightning and sunlight at once. He didn't pull away anymore. And she didn't either. One night, while repairing a cracked oxygen conduit, their hands touched again. This time they both froze. Her glowing eyes lifted to meet his. "I should not," she whispered. "Neither should I," he answered. They stood still, breathless. Then she slowly leaned closer. Her forehead rested against his for a moment, quiet and trembling. It was not a kiss, but it felt heavier than one. After that night they met in secret, hidden corners, silent corridors, quiet hours when the others slept. They never spoke of what they were doing. They just existed near each other, hearts beating, where no one could hear. Sometimes she brought him dried starfruit from her ration pack. Sometimes he brought her small music clips from old Earth songs. She didn't understand the words, but she listened anyway, eyes soft. But their peace could not stay hidden forever. One morning, Mara the cook slammed a tray on the table. Her voice was sharp. "She's changing." Ethan looked up. "What?" "She glows more every day," Mara hissed. "Her skin shines, her eyes burn. It's wrong, and she stays close to you." Others nodded quietly. Burke sneered. "She's infecting him." Ethan stood. Enough. But they didn't stop whispering, and Lira heard them. She walked out of the cafeteria without a word, holding her child close. Later that night, Ethan found her alone in the storage bay, staring at her hands. The silver cracks in her skin glowed brighter than before. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I am not empty anymore," she whispered. "My body knows." "Knows what?" She hesitated. Then she placed his hand gently on her stomach. A faint pulse of warmth throbbed under his palm. Ethan's breath caught. "Lira, are you saying—" "Yes," she whispered. "A new life." For a moment, neither of them moved. A human and a Lyrian were not supposed to create life together. It was said to be impossible, unnatural, forbidden. And yet, here she was, carrying something impossible, something that should not exist, and yet did. Ethan's voice was rough. "Does anyone else know?" "No. Not yet." Her eyes were bright, wet with silver tears. "They will take me. They will cut me. They will call it science." "No," Ethan said sharply. "They won't. You cannot stop them," she whispered. "I will," he said. "I'll get you out." Lira stared at him, stunned. No one had ever said such words to her before. Then her shoulders trembled. "You would run? For me?" "For you, for her," he said, glancing at her sleeping child. "And for the one coming." The alarm crackled suddenly. Incoming transmission. Central Command shuttle arriving. Ethan's blood ran cold. "They can't see you like this," he said quickly. "We have to hide you." Lira held her stomach protectively. "They will scan. They will know." "Then we leave before they land," Ethan said. She blinked. "Leave the outpost?" "Yes." His voice hardened. "Tonight." They stood. In the cold, dim light of the storage bay, the hum of the machines like distant thunder around them. For the first time, Ethan saw fear in her glowing eyes. Not fear for herself, but fear for what she carried, and for the first time she saw fire in his. He wasn't just the man who saved the outpost. He was the man who would burn it all down to protect her. The outpost slept, unaware of the storm brewing inside its walls. Ethan Cole did not sleep. He stood in the dim glow of the control room watching the radar screen. A small red dot blinked on the edge, the Central Command shuttle, approaching fast through the black. They were coming. They would land in less than 8 hours, and if they found Lira, if they saw what she carried, meant they would not let her live. He turned off the screen and slipped into the silent corridors. Lira waited in the storage bay, her child curled asleep on her lap. Her silver blue eyes lifted as he entered. "How long?" 8 hours, Ethan whispered. "Maybe less." Her arms wrapped tighter around her child. "Then we go." "Yes," Ethan said. "Tonight." They moved quickly and quietly. Ethan hacked the shuttle bay locks, overriding access codes and wiping their security logs. His hands shook as he worked, every click echoing like thunder in the empty halls. Lira packed rations, water capsules, and thermal blankets. She carried them in silence, her movements sharp and sure, though Ethan saw her hands tremble when she thought he wasn't looking. "You're afraid?" he said softly. I am alive, she answered. Fear is the proof. At 0300 hours they stood at the edge of the launch bay. The small cargo shuttle lay waiting, black and still like a sleeping bird. Beyond the glass the void stretched endless and cold. Ethan keyed the last override. The shuttle's lights blinked awake. Once we launch, he said. There's no coming back. Lira placed her hand on his. There is nothing to come back. 2. They carried the sleeping child into the shuttle. Ethan sealed the hatch. The air inside tasted of dust and old metal. His heart pounded like war drums. Strap in, he said. Lira sat silently, holding her child close, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the glass. Then the alarm screamed. Intruder detected. Bay locked down, red. Lights burst to life. Metal doors slammed down behind them. They know, Lira whispered. Not yet, Ethan said, and hit the ignition. The shuttle roared awake, fire tearing from its engines. The launch doors refused to open. The system screamed warnings. Manual override, Ethan muttered, slamming buttons. Come on. Security drones swarmed from the ceiling, black and sharp, eyes glowing red. Hold on, he shouted. The shuttle blasted forward. Drones fired pulses of blue plasma. Sparks tore across the hull. Lira stood, as the shuttle shook around her. Her silver veins blazed bright. She raised one glowing hand, a crackling shield of pale. Light spread out like a shimmering bubble, deflecting the incoming blasts. Ethan's jaw dropped. You can do that. I can. For a moment, she gasped. The shield trembled under the hits. Her knees buckled. Sit down, Ethan shouted. You'll burn yourself. She shook her head. Protecting them matters more. The launch bay doors cracked open. Vacuum howled in like a beast. Loose crates flew into the black. Alarms shrieked. Ethan slammed the throttle. The shuttle shot out into the void just as the doors sealed behind them. Drones slammed into the closing gates and exploded in flashes of blue fire. Then, silence. Just stars. Endless, cold, and free. Inside, the shuttle, Lira collapsed into the seat, trembling. The glow under her skin faded, leaving her pale. Ethan unclipped his belt and knelt in front of her. Are you hurt? No, she whispered. Just empty. Her child stirred softly, half asleep. Lira stroked her tiny hand. She will be born in light, she murmured, not in cages. Ethan reached for her hand and held it firmly. Then we'll find her a world full of light. She looked at him, eyes wet and shining like twin stars. You would leave your kind for me? I already did, he said. They drifted past the shadow of Vega 9. The outpost shrank behind them until it was only a pinprick in the dark. No one spoke. No one chased. For now, they were free. Ethan checked the nav system. Nearest hidden. World is 3 weeks away, he said. No colonies, no scanners. Then we go there, Lira said softly. And we never look back. Ethan smiled faintly. Deal. As the shuttle cut through the black, Lira rested her head against his shoulder. Her child slept between them, small and peaceful. Her faint glow lit the dark cabin like moonlight. Ethan stared out at the stars. He had risked everything, lost everything. But, as her fingers curled around his, it didn't feel like loss at all, it felt like beginning. 3 weeks passed like a dream drifting through the dark. The small cargo shuttle glided silently across the black sea of stars. The outpost, the alarms, the cold metal walls, they were far behind now, swallowed by distance and time. Ethan, Cole barely looked back anymore, because every time he looked forward, he saw her. Lira grew quieter as the days passed. Her glow grew brighter, too. Faint silver lines across her arms and belly, pulsing gently like hidden starlight. Sometimes she winced when the baby moved inside her. She said nothing, but Ethan saw. He learned her silences. He learned when to speak and when to simply hold her hand. And at night, while the child slept curled in a blanket, they would sit together in the cockpit, watching stars pass like slow fireflies. "Do you regret it?" Lira asked once, eyes on the void. "Leaving?" Ethan asked. "Everything." He smiled faintly. "No. I only regret not doing it sooner." For the first time, she truly smiled. Soft, tired, real. On the 23rd day, the nav system beeped. A small world floated ahead, wrapped in pale green clouds and wide oceans. It was unnamed, unmarked on any chart, hidden from the maps of both humans and Lyrians. Ethan's heart jumped. "We found it." Lira said nothing. She just held her child close and stared at the soft green glow growing bigger in the window. They broke through the clouds. Below them stretched endless forests like emerald seas, glowing lakes, mountains sharp as black teeth. The sky was golden, the air clean. It felt untouched. It felt free. Ethan guided the shuttle to a flat meadow near a sparkling river. The landing gear touched down with a soft hiss. The engines died. Silence rushed in, warm, living silence. They stepped out into the golden air. Lyra's cloak fluttered in the wind. Her hair shimmered like silver threads in sunlight. The child ran barefoot across the grass, laughing, a sound so pure Ethan almost forgot how to breathe. "This place is alive," Lira whispered. "So are we," Ethan said. They built shelter from the shuttle's panels and canvas sheets. It was small, clumsy, but warm. Ethan hunted for food, found glowing fruits and clean water. Lira planted seeds from her old rations near the riverbank. She hummed to them softly. The plants stirred and sprouted faster, as if hearing her voice. Night they lit a fire and watched the stars rise above their hidden world. There were no alarms here, no orders, no fear, only time, only breath, only them. One quiet dawn, Ethan woke to Lira clutching his arm, face pale and glowing. "It is time," she whispered. He helped her into the shelter. The child watched silently, eyes wide, clutching a blanket. Lira lay on the soft grass. Silver light shimmered from her skin like broken moonbeams. Her breathing came hard. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed fierce. "You can do this," Ethan whispered. "I'm here." Hours passed like heartbeats, and then a small cry, thin and new, cut through the air. Lira held the newborn close to her chest. Tiny, warm, glowing faint like soft dawn, Ethan knelt beside her, breathless. "She's real." Lira smiled through tears of silver light. "Half mine, half yours." The child opened her eyes, one silver blue like her mother's, one deep brown like Ethan's, a bridge between two worlds that had always feared each other. "She is hope," Lira whispered. Days blurred. They cared for the baby together, taking turns sleeping, gathering food, repairing the shelter. The older child giggled and played by the river, sometimes gently touching her baby sister's tiny hands. Lira hummed softly at night, the same lullaby she once sang on cold outpost floors. But here her voice was not hollow. Here it was full. One evening, as the fire crackled low, Ethan checked the old long-range scanner. A faint signal blinked on the edge of the sky, far, but moving. He stared at it, his chest tightening. It was not a star. Someone, or something, was coming. Lira noticed his face. "What is it?" Ethan hesitated, then closed the screen. "Nothing yet." She studied him for a moment, then nodded and held the baby closer. "If they come," she said softly, "we will protect her." Ethan wrapped an arm around them both. "Yes," he said, "we will." Above the quiet meadow, stars burned like silent watchers. The fire whispered. The baby breathed softly in Lyra's arms, and for the first time in his life, Ethan felt whole. The war, the fear, the outpost, all gone. Here, there was only a family. Small, fragile, bright, and ready to fight the whole universe if it ever tried to take this away.